I want it clean, quick and quiet. No trace, no mistake.
Ajani turned slowly to check, but he never got the chance. Wham! A heavy pestle crashed into the back of his head. Alamo's eyes widened. Without a word, he cut a thick stick from a nearby tree and began to dig alongside the dog. Then, his stick struck something hard. It was Ajani. Alamo dropped to his knees beside the body, heart pounding. Ajani lay still, half covered in soil, his face pale, lips dark, limbs limp. Toby backed, then whined, circling anxiously as his tail dropped. Alamo leaned closer, panic setting in. He placed his ear against Ajani's chest. Nothing, no beat, no rise, no breath. Alamo pressed his palm to Ajani's chest and began pushing hard, fast, trying to stir life back into him.
Did nah?
Still nothing. Toby grew frantic. He barked louder, growled at the sky, then whimpered and scratched at the earth like he could claw back time itself. His body trembled. He could sense it. Something was slipping away. Ah! Alamo yelled, now shaking. With no time to waste, he looked around the empty forest path. Then, with desperation tightening in his chest, he stood up and ran, tearing through the bush, leaping over roots, cutting through the branches until he stumbled into the main road. Luckily, he saw a small red car approaching. Alamo jumped into the middle of the road, waving both hands like a madman. The car screeched to a stop.
Help! Help me! Help!
He cried.
One man they dying inside the bush.
Without asking questions, the driver stopped, jumped out of the car, and the two men hurried into the bush. Together, they carried Ajani's motionless body into the back seat. Toby jumped in beside his master, refusing to be left behind. And with tires screeching and hearts racing, they sped off toward the nearest hospital, not knowing if Ajani had a single breath left to give. The small red car tore through the narrow road, bouncing over potholes and swerving past startled passers-by. In the back seat, Ajani's body lay across the seat. Toby didn't stop whimpering. Every few seconds, he nudged Ajani's chest with his nose, as if urging his master not to give up. His eyes darted between Ajani and Alamo, full of silent desperation. Boom! The car pulled up at the hospital before the vehicle fully stopped. Alamo jumped out shouting,
Help! Help us! Person they die here!
Nurses rushed out with a stretcher. Ajani was wheeled in quickly, his skin pale, his body limp, cold and silent. Toby tried to follow, but the security guard blocked him at the door. The dog barked and growled.
Leave him!
Alamo said quickly,
This one no be just dog. This Ajana the reason that man fit still get chance.
Inside the emergency room, the doctors worked fast. CPR, injections, oxygen, defibrillators. Alamo stood outside panting, mud on his arms, chest heaving. Toby stood beside him, eyes glued to the door. After what felt like an eternity, the emergency door creaked open. The doctor's eyes scanned the small crowd and landed on Alamo, still breathless and dust-covered.
You brought him?
The doctor asked. Alamo nodded, shaking.
Yes. Now me and the dog. What happened to him?
The doctor asked. Alamo struggled, swallowing hard. His English was broken.
Then beat him, tie him, bury for bush. My dog show me.
The doctor stared, stunned. Then he nodded slowly.
Thank you.
He turned, pulled out his phone and dialed a number.
Get me the police, now.
As the doctor walked away making urgent calls, Toby's hope began to crack. He had waited. He had done everything. He had brought his master to a safe place. But instead of calling out his master, all he saw were strange faces, talking, pointing, dialing phones. No one brought out Ajani. Toby started backing. He growled. He turned in circles. His tail stiffened, his eyes wide with confusion and rising panic. He thought his master would be returned to him. Instead, people began to shout, "Somebody hold that dog! Take it away! Get it out of here! Doctor, the dog is going wild!" The doctor spun around.
Take that dog out of here, now!
Toby snapped. He dashed forward, dodging startled nurses and sliding past the guard, racing toward the emergency ward door, but it was locked from the inside. Toby rammed into the door with his body. Nothing. He scratched, he cried, he barked like his heart will tear open, but no one listened. Rather, they ran away, thinking he wanted to harm them. Then he felt it, a burn. Toby turned sharply. A security man had come with a burning stick, waving it furiously at him. The flames too close, the smoke too sharp.
Out! Out of here!
Toby backed once more, but this time in pain. He stepped back, then ran, not out of fear, but to survive, because he knew that if he stayed, he might never see his master again. Before we dive into this thrilling tale, here's a shout out to you, my amazing members. Thank you so much for your support. And to you, my amazing subscribers, thank you so much for your love. I see you all. Now, fasten your seatbelts because what you're about to watch will shake you deeply. Let's dive into it. The hospital hallway was tense as Inspector Makinde and his team arrived. Officers whispered among themselves while nurses guided them through. Inside the ICU, Ajani lay unconscious, his face pale, body stilled, with only the soft, steady beeping of the machine, the only proof of life. Makinde stepped closer, staring at the man on the bed.
It's him.
One of his men confirmed.
It's definitely Ajani.
Makinde nodded slowly.
Then this is no accident. Someone tried to bury him alive.
He turned to the doctor.
Thank you for calling us. Henceforth, no one is allowed to see him. No visitors, no family. Just keep him safe. Yes, sir.
The doctor replied firmly. Makinde looked around.
Where is the man who brought him in? I would like to speak with him.
Across the village, Chief Bolarinwa sat alone in his living room, his cup of palm wine untouched. The news had reached him. Ajani was alive. He clenched his jaw. His eyes darkened.
Very stupid boys.
He muttered.
Just one task. Only one simple task.
He slammed his hand on the armrest.
They couldn't even kill one man.
He stood up, paced slowly, rage building. Then he paused by the window, staring into the night.
I will do it myself.
Alamo sat in front of his small hut, gently turning a skewer of bushmeat over a fire. The aroma drifted lazily into the evening air, mixing with the quiet rustle of trees. Suddenly, a police van screeched into the compound. The doors flung open. Inspector Makinde stepped out, his eyes sharp, voice direct.
Are you Alamo Babajide? Benny, sir.
Alamo stood up, wiping his hands on his shirt. Makinde stepped closer.
We have confirmed it was Ajani you brought in. Tell me, how did you find him?
Alamo swallowed.
Na dog lead me, sir. The dog dig the place. I just had finished digging, and I can't carry him.
Makinde nodded, intrigued.
Aja? Benny, sir.
Alamo replied.
I would like to see it. Where is the dog now?
Alamo looked around helplessly.
Since them chased him from the hospital, he never come back. I don't know where he go.
Makinde sighed.
If he returns, let me know immediately. Benny, sir.
The inspector shook Alamo's hands. The officers returned to the van, and within seconds, they were gone, leaving Alamo standing by the fire, staring and wondering where the strange dog had disappeared to. Night fell quietly over Odo, but not all was still. In the shadows, near a narrow path behind the village market, Toby crouched beneath a wooden table, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. His body was weak, his wounds still burned, but his spirit had not dimmed. He watched as a man emerged from a small beer parlor. Akeke, one of the 3 men who buried Ajani, he laughed loudly, his breath thick with alcohol, oblivious to his surroundings. Toby's nose twitched. The scent, the face, the voice. He remembered. Akeke staggered down the quiet road, humming to himself, but he didn't know he was being followed silently, precisely, patiently. From bush to corner, Toby kept his distance. His growl stayed low, his eyes never blinking. Akeke staggered through the narrow path leading to his compound, humming off key and dragging his feet. The night air was thick, the road deserted. Half drunk, he paused by a wall to urinate, his bottle of gin resting by his foot. That was his mistake. To be launched out of the darkness like a shadow born of vengeance, he sank his teeth deep into Akeke's leg. Akeke screamed and stumbled, falling hard onto the ground. But Toby didn't let go. He beat and tore with the fury of a beast wronged, shaking violently, snarling, growling, eyes wild with memory. Akeke's screams pierced the night. By the time the neighbors finally arrived with torches and shouts, Toby had vanished, disappearing into the bush like a ghost. Akeke lay still, body twisted, soaked in blood. His breath was shallow. Someone bent over him.
What happened to you? Who did this to you?
With the last of his strength, Akeke's lips moved, his voice cracked, and the only word that made it past his fear,
Ajaka.
And in that moment, he blacked out. By morning, news of Akeke's brutal attack had spread like wildfire. Villagers gathered in whispers, some claiming it was a mad dog, others swearing it was a spiritual attack. Inspector Makinde stood under the dim light of the village mortuary, staring down at Akeke's lifeless body. His face was pale, jaw twisted, leg turned beyond recognition. The air felt cold and still. Then, the mortician, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, spoke softly beside him.
The people who brought him said his last word was Aja.
Inspector Makinde turned sharply.
Aja?
The mortician nodded.
Yes, sir. A dog.
Makinde's expression darkened. First, a man is buried alive, then rescued by a dog. Now, another man is torn apart, and his final word is a dog. I just sat outside the roadside canteen, his legs bouncing, eyes darting, his drink untouched. His phone had buzzed all night, missed calls from Akeke. He regretted not picking up. Maybe, if he had answered, maybe his friend wouldn't be dead. Just maybe. His thoughts were broken by the voices of two men drinking and chatting in the corner.
Ha! Ibidun! You hear about the man wey die? Which one? That Akeke guy now? Dem say na dog kill am o. Ha! Asake! You sure? Yes now. My brother follow carry am go hospital. No be small thing o.
After listening to the men talk about how his friend Akeke had been mauled by a dog, he didn't need a prophet to tell him it was Ajani's dog, and if it came for Akeke, then he's not safe. Quickly, Eja paid for his drink and walked away, sweat gathering on his back despite the cool breeze. But as he passed a row of shops, he felt it, a pair of eyes, watching, waiting, somewhere in the shadows. Toby followed, silent and relentless, because the list wasn't done and vengeance had a scent. That night, Eja didn't sleep. He shut his windows, locked his doors, turned up the light and sat in the dark, clutching a cutlass. Every little sound made him flinch. A creaking gate, a barking dog in the distance, the wind blowing leaves against his roof. But what haunted him wasn't outside. It was the guilt inside his chest. Outside, somewhere in the village shadows, Toby moved like a ghost. He didn't bark, he didn't growl, he only followed the scent, the memory, the face. Inside his poorly lit room, Eja sat wide-eyed, sweating despite the cold air. The cutlass lay beside him, his back pressed against the wall. He hadn't moved in hours. He kept telling himself he was just being paranoid, that dogs don't come back for revenge, but the thought wouldn't leave his mind. Then, a third. Something landed on his zinc roof. Eja froze. He tightened his grip on the cutlass. Another third. Closer this time. Then silence. Eja waited, terrified. Seconds passed. Then a loud crash. The back door burst open with violent force. Eja jumped to his feet, shouting,
Who there?
No answer. He tiptoed forward, heart pounding, cutlass raised. He moved toward the kitchen, hands shaking. Suddenly, he heard the growl. No, deadly. The moment he turned, Toby lunged. The dog came from the shadows, eyes blazing, teeth bared. He sank his jaws into Eja's arm, dragging him down with brutal force. Eja screamed, struggling, swinging the cutlass wildly, but Toby didn't let go. The two thrashed across the room, knocking down stools, splattering blood across the floor. Toby's rage was not just wild, it was focused, measured. He beat Eja's neck, tore through his shoulder, and pinned him to the ground like a predator reclaiming justice. By the time neighbors came running, alerted by the screams, Toby was gone. All they found was Eja, soaked in blood, his eyes wide open in terror, his breath shallow, his final word whispered into the night.
Ajaka.
Then, stillness. By sunrise, the village of Odo was no longer quiet. Words had spread that Eja was dead, torn apart, mauled in his own house, just like Akeke. And once again, the whispers returned. Them say na that dog. I hear say the dog disappeared before people even reached there. Now, which kind dog be that now? The villagers became scared. They didn't know what to think anymore, but Dogo knew. Dogo sat in a single-room apartment, sweat dripping from his forehead as he packed his things in a haste. Clothes, money, his small dagger tucked in his waistband. He wasn't going to wait for the dog to find him. He had seen what Toby was capable of. First Akeke, now Eja. He zipped his bag, picked out the curtain and stepped out of his house, eyes scanning every corner. Meanwhile, not far from him, behind a narrow fence, Toby crouched, watching, waiting. Dogo didn't know that he was not just a man on the run, he was the prey. Dogo moved fast. He slipped through back paths, avoiding the main roads. Every passerby looked suspicious. Every barking dog made his heart race. He didn't stop to greet anyone. He didn't stop to breathe. He was leaving the village. He had seen too much. He knew that Toby wasn't just some animal. He was vengeance on four legs. Dogo ducked into the old bush path leading to the next town, feet crunching through dry leaves, eyes darting everywhere. But he wasn't alone. Toby was following, silent, focused, tracking every step. He had followed Dogo's scent from the house, across the fence, through the streets, and now into the forest. His wounds hadn't fully healed, but his rage kept him moving. Then, a root caught his foot and Dogo stumbled. He fell hard, his bag spilling. Quickly, he scrambled to his feet. Then he heard it, a growl. But the moment he turned, he locked eyes with the beast. Toby stepped forward, bristling, eyes glowing like fire in the wind. Dogo didn't wait. He ran like a thief. Branches slapped his face, thorns tore his arms, but he didn't care. He ran like death itself chased him, because it was, and this time it had teeth. Behind him, Toby closed in. Dogo knew he couldn't outrun a dog, not this one. Then, he spotted a low crooked tree branch, aged and hanging just low enough. Without thinking, he leapt, grabbed it and swung up, his legs dangling. Toby arrived seconds later, backing, growling, jumping, but couldn't reach him. Dogo laughed breathless.
I win you this time or dead.
He swung slightly, grinning. Shebi you get power. Come bite me now. But what Dogo didn't know was that Toby wasn't an ordinary dog. Without wasting time, Toby turned and ran off into the bush. Dogo chuckled, still hanging.
Omo, I to get sense. Now me be the king of the jungle.
2 minutes later, Dogo heard a soft rustle above. But when he looked up, Toby was on the branch looking down at him, eyes gleaming, no bark, no warning, just fury. Before Dogo could react, Toby beat his hand hard.
Yeah!
Dogo screamed, losing grip. He crashed to the ground like a sack of shit. Before he could even crawl, Toby pounced. He sank his teeth into Dogo's side, then his neck, then his arm, biting without mercy. Dogo screamed, cursed, begged, but no one heard. It was just him and justice. And after a few more snaps, Dogo stopped moving. Toby stood over him, chest heaving, eyes cold. Satisfied, he turned and disappeared into the bush like a shadow with purpose. It was a late evening in Odo. The village, once lively, had grown quieter. People now walked in twos, doors shut early. The once cheerful sound of children playing at dusk had disappeared. Fear had a new name, Aja. Chief Bolarinwa sat in his living room, lights on full, a Bible open before him, but untouched. His eyes flicked to the window every few seconds, hand resting nervously on the armrest of his chair. He had heard Akeke dead, Eja dead, Dogo found in pieces. The 3 men he had sent to eliminate Ajani all dead, torn apart. His throat felt dry. He reached for his drink, then paused when he heard a bark in the distance. His heart pounded. The morning sun rose over Odo, but peace did not come with it. At the police station, Inspector Makinde sat behind his desk, face tense. The reports were piling. 3 men dead, all linked to a dog. Each death more brutal than the last. It was time for answers. He sent for Okon, Ajani's gateman. Later that afternoon, Okon sat nervously in front of him. Makinde leaned in.
Tell me, does your master have a dog?
Okon didn't hesitate.
Yes, sir.
Okay, tell me more about it.
The dog named na Toby. My oga love that dog pass human being sef. He dey follow am everywhere, treat am like him pikin. But since that night when dem carry my oga, the dog run comot. I never see am again.
Makinde nodded slowly. Then he opened the file and laid 3 photos on the table. Akeke, Eja, and Dogo, all dead. Okon looked once and jumped back in fear.
Na dem!
He cried.
Na dem carry my oga that night.
Makinde's heart pounded. It's all connected. The dog wasn't just attacking, he was hunting, avenging. Makinde stood, staring at the photos, the pieces now falling in together. But what he didn't know was that Toby's mission wasn't over. Toby stood quietly by the side of the hospital, eyes fixed on the window of the room where Ajani lay motionless. His body was weak, his fur dirty, and his paws torn from days of running and fighting, but the fire in his chest refused to die. Toby had seen the faces of the men who harmed his master. He had followed their scent, but the one who gave the order, the one who orchestrated it all, had never shown his face, until fate brought him on a platter. The grumbling sound of an old pickup truck broke the hospital's stillness. Toby's ears twitched. His head snapped up. That sound, he knew it. The truck pulled into the compound and stopped. Chief Bolarinwa stepped out. Toby crouched low. He knew that truck. He knew that man. He had seen him countless times around the Chinese compound in better days, always smiling. Chief Bolarinwa walked into the hospital, shoulders squared with authority. At the front desk, he introduced himself as Chief Bolarinwa, the only surviving relative of Ajani. After a quick check with the doctor, Chief Bolarinwa was allowed inside. Ajani hadn't moved in days. Still, he was in coma. The room was quiet. Machines beeped softly. Chief Bolarinwa stood over Ajani's bed and hissed.
Fly wey no dey hear word, dey follow the body enter grave.
He sneered and raised his hand, his fingers curling into a fist as if to strike. But then, a growl, low, warning, dangerous. Chief Bolarinwa turned sharply. At the window, just behind the glass, stood Toby, head low, eyes locked on him, growling. Chief Bolarinwa stepped back in panic, heart racing. For the first time, the mask dropped. Toby had seen his face. Without another word, Chief Bolarinwa fled the room, nearly colliding with a nurse on his way out. He rushed to his truck, jumped in, and sped off, dust rising behind him. He had come to mock the weak, but left as a marked man. Bolarinwa drove like a madman. Sweat rolled down his temples. Despite the car's full blast air vent, his heart thudded louder than the rickety engine of his old pickup truck.
How did that dog find me?
He whispered, glancing nervously into the rearview mirror.
Na ordinary dog be this? I been a spirit.
He hadn't even driven far from the hospital when his stomach twisted. Pressure, urgency. He felt unbearably pressed. The further he drove, the more his stomach churned. Something was turning violently inside him. Ah!
Not now.
He hissed, with no toilet in sight and pressure rising like Judgment Day. He swerved up the quiet road, parked beside a bush, and hurried into the bush, looking for a decent spot to do his business. Unbeknownst to him, Toby was in the back of the truck. The dog had crept in silently at the hospital, curled in the corner like a shadow, waiting, watching. As Bolarinwa squatted between two shrubs, mumbling prayers and blaming beans he ate last night, he had just started to relieve himself when he heard it. A growl, deadly, close. His eyes widened in fear. Then another growl, closer this time. Bolarinwa turned his head slowly. There, standing before him was Toby, teeth bared, growling like thunder trapped in a cage.
Yeah!
Chief Bolarinwa screamed, jumping to his feet without even wiping himself. He turned and ran, his body jiggling through the bush. One would think that a man that fat would not be able to move fast, but fear had given him wings. Behind him, Toby gave chase, weakened by hunger, slowed by wounds. Toby couldn't run like before, but he didn't stop. He would chase to his last breath if it meant protecting Ajani. This wasn't just revenge, this was love, loyalty, war. Bolarinwa ran through trees, leapt over roots, pushed through bushes until suddenly he stopped. A dead end. His eyes widened. He was standing at the edge of a cliff. No path forward, no tree to grab, only wind and death. Behind him, Toby stood, growling like thunder wrapped in fur.
Wait, I beg, we fit talk this thing out.
But Toby didn't wait. Instead, he leapt. In panic, Chief Bolarinwa stumbled backward and fell off the cliff. Down he fell until his head shattered against a rock far below. Then silence. Toby stood at the cliff's edge. He looked down, watched, then slowly turned around, his body shaking as he walked back into the bush. His mission was complete. The village of Odo slowly began to breathe again. Whispers turned to stories, fear turned to silence, and the silence turned to awe. But Ajani had not yet woken. He still lay in the hospital, eyes closed, body weak, floating between life and death. But then something changed. The machines around him began to beep stronger. His chest rose with more certainty. His fingers twitched, and then he opened his eyes. The nurse standing by gasped. She called in the doctor, who rushed in immediately, called to a maid, and before long, the word spread: Ajani is awake. Meanwhile, in a small corner of the forest, Toby lay beneath a tree, breathing gently, wounds scabbing over. His body was bruised, thin, but his eyes were calm. He had done it. He had kept his promise. And as the sun rose higher over Odo, Ajani, weak but alive, whispered one name: Toby. Somewhere deep in the bush, Toby raised his head. He had heard that voice, faint, familiar, echoing in the wind. It was his master, Ajani. Toby's ears twitched weakly. He recognized the voice. He had done it. He had kept his master safe, but his body could no longer carry him. With one final breath, Toby closed his eyes, and everything went still. Days later, Ajani was discharged from the hospital, weak but recovering. The police and villagers had briefed him how Toby hunted down his abductors one by one. Ajani listened in silence, eyes wet with grief and pride. Toby saved you, they told him. Without wasting time, he sent out a search party. They combed the village, they combed the forests, they called out his name, no sign, until on their way back, they stumbled upon Chief Bolarinwa's truck, parked by the bush, engine long dead, windows dusty, tires now flat. The men followed the trail into the bush, expecting to find Chief Bolarinwa, but instead, they found the decomposing body of a dog lying peacefully beneath a tree. They carried it back to the village, and when Ajani saw the body, he dropped to his knees, tears streaming.
It's Toby,
he whispered. The entire village gathered days later. A hero's burial was held. The police were there. Ajani's doctors, nurses, Alamo, even the animals in the village were all present. They laid Toby to rest beside Ajani's father's farmland, the place where Toby had once run free. Ajani placed his hand on the wooden marker and said softly,
"You were more than a dog. You were my brother."
As for Chibolariwa, he was never found, but far down the cliff, beneath the rocks and wild bushes, vultures fed quietly on what remained of him, nature reclaiming what evil tried to hide. Moral lesson: Toby, a dog, showed that love, loyalty, and courage can come from the most unlikely places. While people betrayed Ajani, it was the silent loyalty of his dog that brought justice. Evil may hide for a while, but loyalty never forgets. In the end, it wasn't blood or power that saved Ajani. It was love, loyalty, and a dog's unshakable devotion. This story isn't just a tale of revenge, it's a story of loyalty that refused to die, love that fought through pain, and justice that came through the most unexpected form. If you enjoyed this story and would love to see more interesting stories, please consider subscribing to this channel, not forgetting to turn on the post notification icon so that once another interesting video drops, you will be the first to be notified. You can also check out these videos here. I promise you won't be disappointed. Till we meet again in my next video, remain blessed.